The Sunshine Skyway Bridge, a cable-stayed structure spanning Tampa Bay, Florida, has a history rooted in both tragedy and engineering achievement. The original steel cantilever bridge, completed in 1954, faced limitations in ship clearance, leading to plans for a replacement. Construction of the new cable-stayed bridge commenced in 1971, with completion in 1987. The iconic Bob Graham Sunshine Skyway Bridge, named after former Florida Governor Bob Graham, featured a main span of 1,200 feet and towers reaching 430 feet in height. Tragically, the original bridge suffered a section collapse in 1980 when a cargo ship collided with it, just months before the completion of the new structure.
Vessel calling Mayday, vessel in distress. This is United States Coast Guard, St. Petersburg, Florida. Request your position, nature of distress, and number of persons on board. Over.
On the morning of May 9th, 1980, during a violent rain squall, the Summit Venture, an empty phosphate freighter headed for Tampa to load cargo, struck a pier supporting the south band span, and 1,261 feet of the bridge fell into Tampa Bay. 6 cars and a Greyhound bus fell 150 feet to the water, and 35 people lost their lives. A pickup truck also fell from the bridge, but it bounced off the ship on the way down, breaking the fall. The driver, who was alone, survived.
Adventure, Coast Guard, St. Petersburg. Roger, what is the size of your vessel and can you assist? Over.
Cannot assist. We're 606 feet long, white craft. We cannot assist. We are in our department. Stop all the traffic on the bridge. Send some vessels out here to render assistance. People are water.
This is Coast Guard, St. Petersburg. Roger.
The Sunshine Skyway Bridge disaster of 1980. Hi everyone, and welcome to J is for Justice. My name is Jay and I am your host. If you like live breaking news and following current true crime, then please consider subscribing to my channel. And if you like what you see in this video, giving it a thumbs up.
Afternoon. A tragedy of untold proportions was unfolding in Tampa Bay today and continues at this hour. And once again, it involved the accident-prone Sunshine Skyway Bridge.
The Sunshine Skyway Bridge accident is considered one of the worst bridge disasters in history. In the years of litigation that followed, the ship owner faced claims for wrongful death by the survivors of those who died, a personal injury claim by the pickup driver, and a claim by the state of Florida Department of Transportation for millions of dollars for damage to the bridge. The lawsuits asserted the accident was caused by the negligence of the ship's owner and its crew.
At least 31 persons are believed dead. At about 7:30 this morning, the bulk carrier Summit Venture crashed into the southern span of the bridge, tearing loose 2 different sections. They are in the water, another part is dangling, apparently ready to fall, and a car is straddling the gap between the bridge and open space.
Several cars and a Greyhound bus were thrust into the water.
Leslie, as you say, I am here live at Fort DeSoto Park. It doesn't seem like it was very long ago that we were here at this same location, the command center for the Blackthorn accident.
The Blackthorn incident occurred on January 11th, 1980, just a few months before the Sunshine Skyway Bridge disaster. The U.S. Coast Guard cutter Blackthorn, a buoy tender ship, collided with the tanker MV Capricorn near the entrance of Tampa Bay. The collision resulted in the sinking of the Blackthorn, leading to the loss of 23 crew members' lives.
You're looking at some tape from just a few moments ago, actually about an hour ago. These were the beginnings of the grim scene, the beginnings of bodies being brought in from that accident at the Skyway. So far, 17 bodies have been brought here to Fort DeSoto Park. They have been removed by the Pinellas County Medical Examiner.
A microburst had suddenly hit the freighter with torrential rains and 70-mile-per-hour winds as it was in the middle of a turn in the shipping channel near the bridge, cutting visibility to near zero and temporarily rendering the ship's radar useless. Largo put the ship's engines into full reverse and ordered the emergency dropping of the anchor as soon as he realized that the freighter was out of the channel. But the bow still hit two support piers with enough force to cause a portion of the roadway to collapse.
With me here is Lieutenant Robert Chute from the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department. If you had to estimate, how much longer do you think you'll be out here doing this job?
This situation should be stabilized a little sooner than the last one, in so much as that we don't have quite the problem with access to the vehicles. It's merely we're searching for additional vehicles, if there are any, and trying to recover people from
The man in the pickup truck was a survivor of this tragedy. He was interviewed from his hospital bed about the incident.
It was Wesley McIntyre who went off but somehow managed to survive.
The bridge, all of a sudden the bridge started to shake and move, and then they dropped down and there was a ship, and I went off the end into the ship.
What did it feel like as you were falling?
There's nothing, because last I remembered it was just going off the bridge, and then next thing I knew I was in the water.
And then what?
I opened the door and managed to get out and swim to the surface, and when I got there was a girder and I climbed on that and hung on.
Last October, McIntyre died of bone cancer. This morning at 7:34, the exact time of the accident, McIntyre's family sat and remembered.
Now we're going to hear from the survivor of this infamous photo. He noticed that something didn't look right and slammed on his brakes. And this is where he ended up. And he had 3 other passengers in the car at the time.
The bus fell in. But this one man, Richard Hornbuckle, who we talked to, and you'll hear from him in just a minute, he survived, and so did 4 people in his car. He saw pieces of metal hanging off the edge of the bridge. His car is now hanging on the edge of that bridge.
It was raining, cats and dogs, of course. It was dark. The wind was blowing like a hurricane. I was driving at about 20-25 miles an hour. A Greyhound bus, or some type of bus, passed me doing about 30-35, very slow. On the outside lane, I switched over. There was a stalled car here and got in behind him. And as I came to the very top of the bridge here, I saw the rest of the bridge was out and applied the brakes immediately and stopped with them about 2 feet of going in. They all bailed out of the car and went back up to stop the other cars, waving. And we got all the other cars stopped. And then another car that was here pulled up and blocked it. And then I looked down, saw my car with all 4 doors open, and the wind was blowing. I went and closed them so that it wouldn't blow over.
Richard Hornbuckle, who narrowly escaped injury when he stopped just before going over the edge. That was a survivor, but you can't help to think of the shock and terror that went through people's mind as they were going off the bridge.
These incredible pictures I'm sure you're seeing right now are, of course, of the ship and a large part of the superstructure from the Skyway. Maybe 40.
The massive damage to the Sunshine Skyway bridge was astounding.
There's still some debris hanging from there, but the divers are diving the rest of the length. I understand it's about 1,000 feet of the bridge that was taken out. They're searching there, of course, for any more bodies, and I suppose at this time probably no chance of survivors.
After the Summit Venture disaster, the southbound span was used as a temporary fishing pier, and the northbound span was converted back to carry 1 lane in either direction until the new bridge opened. Before the old bridge was demolished and hauled away in barges, McIntyre, the only survivor in the collapse, was the last person to drive over it. He was accompanied by his wife, and when they reached the top of the bridge, they dropped 35 white carnations into the water, one for each person who died. Some saw Largo as culpable in the accident, but not Tampa trial lawyer Steve Yerid, who represented Largo in the 1980 trial and through that process became his friend. Steve Yerid said that survivor's guilt took Largo's soul. He became the scapegoat, said the attorney. Yerid was a 30-year-old attorney at the time. He defended charges of blame against Largo from Florida state officials and in federal hearings by the National Transportation Board. Judge Chris Bentley, Chief Judge for the State of Florida Division of Administrative Hearings, ruled on December the 24th, 1980, that Largo did not act negligently and did act reasonably under the circumstances. Bentley declared the Sunshine Skyway Bridge disaster a, quote, act of God. He also reinstated Largo's suspended pilot license, which had been stripped away after the accident. Tragically, Largo soon found himself suffering from multiple sclerosis and stopped piloting. Instead, he spent time answering crisis phone lines and helping others.
As the attorney representing John Largo, the man piloting the freighter, a man who, despite his acquittal, would carry guilt for the rest of his life.
What this film does, it highlights the truth, the necessity to have courage, to have hope when others have lost it, to believe in
I never
yourself.
got back on track, in a way. I failed my own identity, in a way. I don't want to get dramatic.
He had glimpses of exoneration, but he always looked at the tragedy as something that he blamed himself for. I'm so emotional because, well, I guess I haven't tried. I tried not to think about it for 20 years. Now 30, 40.
John Largo, the harbor pilot who had been steering the ship, was later cleared of wrongdoing by both a state grand jury and a Coast Guard investigation.
Greyhound bus went over the edge, plunging 200 feet to the water below. 35 people were killed.
Each year, the Tampa Bay community somberly marks the anniversary of the Sunshine Skyway Bridge disaster. This annual remembrance serves as a tribute to the lives lost in the tragic events of that fateful day in 1980.
There was a tremendous batch of thunderstorms out here in the Gulf of Mexico. Hurricane-force winds as high as 90 miles an hour. And while it's been 10 years, the images of that accident are still vivid.
35 years ago, during the height of an unforeseen storm, 35 people, including a baby, lost their lives when a freighter crashed into the Sunshine Skyway Bridge. Today, a 6-foot memorial stands tall in memory of the victims who perished.
We raised the money in just under 30 days. All the money we needed, it was just about $9,000. Yeah. There are 35 names on the memorial for all the 35 people who passed away that morning. It was 35 years ago today.
Yes, it's hard to believe.
It's a story that plays itself out in Tampa Bay all the time. This day.
Some information. I read some newspaper articles saying they were trying, but there were a lot of things involved. How it was going to be funded, where it was going to be.
I want to thank Representative Arthemia Joyner.
You can see right now a lot of tiny boats and a couple of helicopters that were below. Police helicopters, Coast Guard helicopters, and all of these boats were carrying volunteer divers as well as Sheriff's Department divers. Everybody responding to the emergency. A call went out for volunteers, and these people are out there at that time, which was about 8:45 to 9 o'clock this morning, trying to look for volunteers. And I suppose they're still out there now, as Neil has said.
State DOT scuba divers Bob Raiola and Mike Betts talk about what they saw underwater in the wreckage.
In these tragedies, there are so many people affected. We've got to remember those divers that had to go down and retrieve all of the victims. And here you're going to meet 2 of them and hear about their experience diving down into that Greyhound bus.
I felt that there was a child still inside. That I wasn't able to get to. We didn't seek the spotlight. We came out, we did our job as best we could.
One of them was 19-year-old John Calloway Jr. His family called him Chip. He was on the bus on his way home from college for summer break. His mother faced the unimaginable loss just before Mother's Day.
Every time there's a family gathering, he's missing. Every time one of my kids do something that's admirable that I would want the family to rejoice over, he's missing. That's the part that really matters so much.
Hello? While she misses her son, Calloway gets a call every Mother's Day from her son's best friend. He was also on the bus, but got off at the Tampa stop before the bus continued to the Skyway.
Both the main spans and both the intact northbound bridge and the damaged southbound bridge were demolished in 1993, and the approaches for both old spans were made into the Skyway Fishing Pier State Park. Despite the tragedies, including multiple suicides, the Sunshine Skyway Bridge remains an enduring landmark along Florida's west coast.